The night was darker than usual when Emily Walker drove back from her evening shift at the diner. The small town of Willow Creek was quiet, tucked away in the rural edges of America, where life moved slower, yet secrets always seemed to lurk in the shadows. Emily lived alone in a rented farmhouse on the outskirts of town, a place her friends often told her was too isolated for a young woman in her 20s. But Emily had always craved space, quiet, and the kind of independence that living alone could offer. She never imagined that one decision would make her life the center of a terrifying story no one would forget. Emily's closest friend, Sarah Mitchell, often joked about her courage, or her recklessness, depending on the day. "You're braver than I'd ever be," Sarah told her once. "Out there in that house with no neighbors around, and just fields stretching out forever. You'll make the headlines one day, Emily. Either as a heroine or as a missing person." Emily had laughed at the time, brushing off Sarah's fears as silly paranoia. But the words would come back to haunt her. That night, the diner had been unusually busy, filled with truckers passing through and locals staying late to avoid the storm that was predicted to roll in. By the time Emily clocked out, her manager, a kind but exhausted woman named Linda, reminded her to drive carefully. "Storm's on its way. Don't take the back roads tonight," Linda warned. Emily nodded, but as always, she hated the long detour through town. She decided she'd risk it and take the shortcut. The farmhouse sat behind a stretch of woods. To reach it, Emily had to drive down an old gravel road with no streetlights. Her headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but thick trees and the occasional flicker of a deer's eyes. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the wind howled outside, making branches scrape against her car like bony fingers dragging across metal. When she finally pulled into her driveway, the storm was close. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the sky cracked with flashes of lightning that briefly lit up the house. Emily grabbed her bag, locked the car, and hurried inside, her shoes crunching against the gravel as she moved quickly. She hated storms, especially when she was alone. Inside, she locked the door, made herself a cup of tea, and tried to convince herself that the night would pass like any other. But it didn't. Around midnight, as the storm reached its peak, Emily woke up to a strange sound. At first, she thought it was the wind pushing against the house, but then she realized it was different. It was a steady tapping, like knuckles against glass. Her heart skipped as she sat up in bed, straining her ears. The tapping came again, this time from the living room window. Every nerve in her body screamed at her not to move, but she couldn't help herself. She crept out of bed and tiptoed toward the sound. The storm outside was deafening, but the tapping was unmistakable. When she reached the window, she pulled back the curtain just a fraction, and froze. A man was standing outside in the rain. His face was obscured by shadows, but his hand was pressed against the glass, tapping rhythmically with his fingers. Emily stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. Who was he? Why was he here? Panic rushed through her veins as she fumbled for her phone, but when she turned back to the window, the man was gone. Emily dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The operator's calm voice answered, and Emily whispered frantically about the man outside her house. The dispatcher told her to stay inside, lock the doors, and wait for the police. But before the officers could arrive, something happened that Emily would never forget. From down the hall, she heard the creak of a floorboard. Her blood ran cold. Whoever the man was, he wasn't outside anymore. He was inside the house. Emily clutched her phone, whispering to the dispatcher, "He's in here. Please, please hurry." She darted into her bedroom, locked the door, and shoved a chair under the knob. Her entire body trembled as she heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, like someone enjoying the fear they were causing. And then a voice. A calm, deep voice spoke from the other side of the door. "Emily, you begged me to never stop. And I never will." Emily's mind raced. What was he talking about? She had never seen this man before in her life, or at least she thought she hadn't. His words sent shivers down her spine, making her wonder if he was someone from her past, someone she had forgotten but who had never forgotten her. The doorknob rattled. The chair pressed against it shook violently. Emily screamed into the phone, begging the dispatcher to send help faster. The voice outside the door chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to echo in her bones. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I'm here because you asked me to stay. And I always keep my promises." Emily's heart pounded. She didn't understand what he meant, but one thing was clear, he wasn't going to stop. When the police finally arrived, the house was empty. Emily was found locked in her bedroom, hysterical, clutching her phone. The officers searched the entire property but found no sign of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. To them, it looked like Emily had imagined the whole thing. But Emily knew the truth. The man was real, the voice was real, and somewhere out there, he was waiting, ready to keep his promise.